So my name is John Michael Torres. I'm communications coordinator here with LUPE, and I'm happy to be talking to you all today about a topic that's going to be really important this year as an election year. But first off, to tell you a little bit about myself, my pronouns are he, él. I'm from Mission, Texas, but I grew up in California, and as a child, I was part of an spiritual intentional community where all the families pitched in together to make sure that everybody had what we needed: education, healthcare, uh, food, groceries, everything that we needed. And my dad would work long hours, hard work as a painter to contribute towards that project to make sure that everybody had what we needed. He would leave in the mornings before sun up. He'd come back well after sundown, covered. He was a painter, and he was covered in paint from head to toe. And he would come in and swoop in for a hug and lift us up. And I remember the white paint speckled all over his dark brown skin. And he sacrificed a lot of time away from us in order to contribute to this project that made sure that all these kids, all these families had what we needed to thrive. And that project, that experiment ended. We had to move to Texas and eventually to the Valley. And I found out that we were poor and we were struggling. My dad was still working hard. He was still putting in long hours, and still we weren't making ends meet. My mom eventually had to start working as well, full time, and still it wasn't enough. We descended further into poverty and into debt. And it wasn't until much later that I started to understand that our struggles were not because of happenstance, because of individual choices by anybody, but rather they were by design. It was a product of rules that were rigged against people like us trying to come together to make sure that we could all thrive. And today, those kinds of rules are all over our society, all of our government policy. But today, we're going to talk about one way that some politicians and their corporate friends use rhetoric, use campaign rhetoric, use narrative in order to make it easier for them to rig the rules against us. And so we're going to launch into it by watching a video, recent political ad by a candidate here in the Rio Grande Valley. And while you're watching this video, pay attention to who they cast as the heroes, as the villains, and the values that they espouse. And also, what are the anxieties that they are tapping into, the audience's anxieties? You want to go ahead? Sergio.
When you love something, it's worth protecting. I'm Monica de la Cruz, and I love America. As a mom, I teach my kids to follow the rules, just as my grandmother did when she legally immigrated from Mexico. But Joe Biden abandoned us and our border, transforming our country with drugs, gangs, and violence. I'm Monica de la Cruz, and I approve this message because, unlike Joe Biden, I believe America is worth protecting.
Republican Monica de la Cruz for Congress.
All right, thank you, Sergio. So now we're going to talk about, and feel free to come off mute and weigh in.
For dinner, if you're interested.
I'm vegan, Walter.
Oh, sorry about that. Feel free to come off mute and weigh in. Who did they cast as heroes in this story? Or in the chat also works.
America.
America is one of the heroes.
Female Hispanics.
Female Hispanics. And who's defending America in this video?
The border wall?
The border, yeah. And the politicians who put up the border wall? And in terms of the villains in this story, and legal citizens, Denise, thank you. And in terms of the villains, in the story, as Mario mentioned in the chat, someone who crossed illegally. You want to go to the next slide, Sergio? Real quickly, what are the values that the heroes hold dear? Or in another way of thinking about it is, what are the values that they believe that they share with their audience?
The distinction between crossing here legally.
Mm-hmm. Legally versus illegally. Also, sometimes by the rules or according to the law. Protection, and Denise says protection, law, following the rules. Yeah, and following the rules also oftentimes has to do with fairness, even playing field, everybody playing by the same rules. Go ahead and advance, Sergio. And then again, the villains, people who crossed illegally. Who else are the villains in this story?
The people who stand in the way of the border wall. Right?
People who
Oppose
people
the
who
border wall.
oppose the border
People
wall.
with
And what is
tattoos.
people with tattoos? Yeah, and this image is an image of gang members from Central America. Men with tattoos, yes, and particularly brown men with tattoos, right? The who are some of the other implied, and I think that Sergio kind of drugs are also villains. People who bring drugs, people who bring crime. Um, the people who are standing in the way of the wall because they don't want to protect America, right? And like she names at the end, President Biden. So what are some of the, you want to go ahead to the next slide? What are some of the anxieties that the audience must hold that the maker of this ad is trying to tap into?
The great replacement theory that we're changing America. America's no longer what it used to be. Now it's being, sorry, I'm saying too much, but that's what I think.
Thanks, Sergio.
These people are gonna come take your job.
Yep, jobs, economic insecurity, job insecurity. What are some of the other anxieties?
Oh, crime.
Yeah. Yes, and it could be whether people actually experience that crime or it's just something that they've that's part of their imagination of what's going on in the world around them. And there's and not explicitly said in this, but underneath that, there's also anxieties around around lack of quality education, healthcare, access to healthcare, the things like increased drug prices, increased prices of food, things like that. Right? They're not explicitly referenced, but those are the kinds of things that people are that this is designed with the understanding that people are going through anxiety either or some of those challenges either directly or indirectly. Either they themselves are experiencing it or they're experiencing it as a wider story of the country that they're part of, that they live in. Yes, and Mario points out that experienced versus imagined anxieties, and we won't get too far into it. I think that we can get really deep into that kind of stuff, but today we're going to stay pretty surface level. All right, go ahead and next up, Sergio. All right. So this at its core, this ad, what this is telling people is, hey, look, we know that you are playing by the rules. We know that you are doing what's right, and still you're struggling. And hey, you know what? There are these people who are just flaunting the rules. They're walking across the border. These hordes of dark brown people coming across the border, and they are taking your jobs. They are taking the resources that you've worked so hard for, and that's why you are struggling, right? And there's there's another one. I think there's a different story that could also be, that we could say is being told about this, which Sergio got to, which is not just that those economic anxieties, but hey, you as a Western white European oriented society are being, your society is being usurped by brown people from other places. The that whole story though is or is the assumption there is that there are these real anxieties that are underneath it, right? These anxieties that are economic anxieties, and these anxieties that are also related to the insecurity of the access to services that we need in order to live dignified lives. And whereas what we're talking about right here, this ad might be, you might write it off as being for a certain demographic up north, white people who have these strong racial anxieties, and it's just pandering to them to donate towards her campaign. That's one way of, that would be one way to write it off. But the reality is that these ideas have very strong footholds within our own communities, within Black and Brown, within immigrant communities. And that's because of decades of this same type of rhetoric that it's maybe the object of that rhetoric has changed. Maybe it's not always immigrants. Maybe it's not always people who move here. Other times it's other types of racially coded language, like inner cities, like welfare, people on welfare, welfare, and other derogatory ways of talking about Black and Brown people who are also working poor people. So this strategy uses those dog whistles and implicitly in that, using that coded language to tap into those economic anxieties in order to try to get us pointing the finger at others. And it is a way that they then use those divisions to cut funds and programs and services that we all depend on, and to rig the rules of the government and economy to pad their profits. Sergio, you want to go ahead and cool. So this approach has been used in lots of different ways in our society, from campaign rhetoric to speeches, to stump speeches, to policy, how policy is implemented. And it's repeated over and over and over again. It is a strategy. What we're talking about today, what we're going to present today, is another strategy, a strategy that we can use to interrupt it. We're not talking about a silver bullet. We're not talking about a magic bullet. We're not talking about something that's going to magically defeat this strategy. Rather, we're talking about a tool that we can learn to use, and that we can also use over and over and over again, that can build solidarity between people across differences, and build the will to work together towards common good. So that strategy has these elements in common. One, discuss race overtly, because they're doing it implicitly. If we don't discuss it race overtly, then their messages win. Name that race-based scapegoating as a tactic that hurts us all, especially hurts us economically through the insecurity that it creates. Emphasize how we unite across race and background in order to win what we all need, because that's the way that we can call our audience to their higher ideals. Our audiences oftentimes are in a place where they don't have firm beliefs. They do have bigger ideals, but don't have firm beliefs on all these topics that we're talking about. And we need to oftentimes call them to their higher ideals in order for them to open their ears and listen, and to engage with us on the topic. And then remind people that we have won before, like with the civil rights movement, labor movement, et cetera, and that working together is how we make government work for all of us. Again, calling people to their higher ideals. Go ahead and next, Sergio. Okay, so let's look at an example of how we do this, how we use this in practice, how LUPE is using it in practice, and then we're gonna have a chance to hopefully practice those of us here. So, and Sergio, I'm just gonna read it, so go ahead and hit the next slide once I read. Go. If you can go back first. Okay, so we are the heroes of our own story, working to create an RGV where everyone can thrive. We come together in barbecues and bodas, plate sales and bake sales to help each other through the hard times and celebrate the good ones. But power-hungry politicians and greedy corporations are using immigration policy as a tool to increase their wealth and power. Corporations that profit from militarizing the border and the politicians they buy exploit our differences and turn us against each other, hoping we'll shame and blame Black and brown Texans and new immigrants for our struggles. They block progress on immigration to keep our communities struggling and keep immigrants exploitable, while they pad their profits. They don't want us to unite to demand what all of our families need. We can stop them if we stand in solidarity as working people and call them out. We can join together to push back on their divide and conquer tactics and win what we all need to thrive. Just like we won farm worker rights, streetlights for colonias, and civil rights in the past. If we unite around what brings us together, the Rio Grande Valley can be a shining light on the border, an example to the nation and the world. So, this is one example of how this strategy of what's called race class narrative strategy is used. So we want to take some first pause for questions first, and we're going to revisit the strategy, and we're going to work it together. I think we went really quickly. We're expecting this to take longer. So we can. I think that we can probably open it up for a little bit of discussion before we go into practice. All right. So questions or reactions to what we presented so far?
Just really quick, what did you call that strategy? Race-based narrative?
Race class narrative.
Great. Thanks.
And I guess I should say that race class narrative, it was a strategy that has been used in places like Michigan, Wisconsin, Minnesota, to mobilize around certain issues in order to create more inclusive policies, including defeating anti-immigrant legislation and building support for including immigrants, people without documents, in public services. And it's also been used in a variety of other types of campaigns. It's a strategy that's been designed particularly to disrupt these racist dog whistle rhetoric.
And is it something that where people can see, like, is there recorded examples where this tactic worked?
Yeah. Mm-hmm. Yes. So there's a whole community around this narrative, race class narrative, that have been documenting case studies, and there's a really great list of resources, videos where it's been that have been collected using the narrative in advertisements and in campaign launch videos and things like that. And I'll be happy to link that at the end. So what stands out to you about the border? Where do you see the border's place, our community's place in this kind of a narrative about dog whistle interrupting? Oh yes. Can you go back to the slide about power-hungry politicians? Mm-hmm. I think you can go back one more. Oh, yeah. Mario, did you come off mute? Did you want to say something?
Not yet. Sorry. So, quick question: where's that Monica de la Cruz from?
I'm actually not sure where she's from, but the race is is Texas 15, right?
Okay.
Yeah, I believe she's trying to replace Gonzalez's spot in the Senate.
In Congress. That's the open race.
Yeah, sorry, Congress.
So
Yeah, and we'll share this slide in the video with everybody afterwards if you wanted to go over it again. And we're always available for questions after the fact.
Sergio, what do you think about if we watch one example of this video from California?
Yeah.
And then how about we do this? So we watch the video from California, and then think about how would we create that video if we were going to create it for the Rio Grande Valley. How would we create that similar video for the Rio Grande Valley around a campaign to win a $15 minimum wage across the Rio Grande Valley, in cities across the Rio Grande Valley. And let me find it real quick. Sergio.
Yeah, if you can send me the link.
Yes. It's going to take me a second because I did not queue it up.
Yeah, like John Michael was saying, we'll try to do a practice run. We'll try to imagine what the heroes would be in this $15 campaign, who the villains are, and how we can come together to bring about that change that we all know we working class people deserve. So I think,
this,
yeah, sorry. Yeah, I just wanted to acknowledge Bruno for joining us right now. We're just pulling up a video talking that'll show an example of what we were talking earlier today about race class narrative. And we'll share the video of anything you missed after the call.
All right, it's not the same video that I was planning on, but let's go ahead and check this one out.
When the impossible now happens daily, it's time we recognize that we define what possible means. We cannot go back to business as usual because business as usual is what created this crisis. For too long, the few have had their say over the many by keeping us divided. We can make sure we have what we need to get and stay well. Because the future is what we do together.
All right. So in that video, you can see a couple of things. One is that the images themselves represent these ideas, right? By showing images of people of different backgrounds, different faiths, different races, we can evoke that idea of of solidarity across our differences. And then they talk about the few over the many, keeping the what got us here is the few having power over the many, the few benefiting from at the expense of the many. And then, of course, it has a variety of topics in there, right? From climate change to healthcare costs to economic insecurity, right? So now what we're going to do is we're pulling up. Sergio dropped a Jamboard in the chat. If you don't have a whole lot of experience with Jamboard, that's okay. Sergio and I are going to be editing it. But what we're going to do is Jamboard is like a sticky, it's like a whiteboard where you can place sticky notes. So Sergio, you want to give an example of putting a sticky note on there? Off to the side on your left, you can see on your side to the left, you can see a little spot that looks like a note icon right there. And you click on that and it'll bring up a note, and then you can type a note and add it to the whiteboard. So we're gonna create a video for our launch, for a campaign launch for $15 an hour across the Rio Grande Valley. In this ad, we're going to emphasize uniting across our differences. We're going to talk about race explicitly. We're going to call out those few who rig the rules against us and keep us from the wages that keep us from receiving the wages that really represent our worth. And we're going to do that together in sticky notes. All right. How does that sound? Can I get some? Oh, got a thumbs up from Bruno. Got a thumbs up from Sergio. All right. Cool. So feel free to come off mute and throw out your ideas, and Sergio and I will add notes to the Jamboard, or you're also welcome to add them yourself. So what are the strengths that we want to uplift in this? What are our community's strengths?
Hold on. It appears that there was an issue because some of the emails were outside our network, but I'm giving you all access right now. So just refresh it, and you should have access.
Oh, sorry about that. Great. Awesome. Thanks, Denise. Thanks, Stephen. So what are some of the strengths that we want to uplift and highlight in our video launch?
So if I can talk up a little bit, I
Sure.
think a big one is like workers' rights. Because like there's a big community of like immigrants and young people who are like working this horrible jobs at like fast food or like Walmart or this sort of corporations, right? And well, they don't really have a platform, right? Like a lot of politicians are like, oh, $15 doesn't work in the valley. We're gonna go broke. And think about the economy. So that's sort of thing. And so nobody looks for McDonald's workers who work like 12 hours and they get minimum, like they get 7.
Yep. And hold that thought also when we talk about who our heroes are for the story. We got also kept America open during COVID shutdown as essential workers. We got hardworking families and mixed status families. Who put mixed status families? Do you want to explain what that is?
I put mixed status family. So I think mixed status means that there are people that are protected from deportation within a family and people that are not protected from deportation. Often they're called undocumented, but these are families. Some of these people have been living here for 20, 30 years, and they still don't have protections from deportations, while other members in their family don't have to worry about that stuff, but still have to live with the fact that they, sometimes you can't cross the checkpoint because your family can't cross the checkpoint. There's a lot of things, but there's a lot of us that are kind of fit into that, and I think it's something that unites us instead of something we should be ashamed of.
Awesome. And then somebody also wrote unskilled labor is actually highly skilled labor that's provided the critical services to society. And I think that the pandemic has demonstrated that. All right. Any other strengths? And I do want to give the example that we gave for the LUPE example earlier, that how we pull together. We pull through by pulling together. We're supporting each other and through through baby showers and through weddings and baptisms, all the different times and through medical expenses, GoFundMe's, plate sales. Is that we, not to mention the times like when hurricanes have hit, when there's been massive flooding, or the winter storm when we've helped out our neighbors. Cool. And then somebody also wrote culture of love and inclusiveness. Whoever wrote that, do you want to come off mute and share why?
Yeah, I wrote it. It's just that families are strong. The families support each other, not just within a family, but across the families, as has been mentioned. Into a barrio, you find a wonderful unity and a cohesiveness there amongst the peoples. It's one of love and one of inclusiveness, even though they may be feeling unified as being outcasts from mainstream society.
Awesome. Thank you, Stephen. All right, let's go ahead and go on to the next board. So you can also click the arrow up on top to advance to the second board, and we're going to talk about our challenges. So here, let's talk about the challenges that a lot of us face, and let's limit them to the topic of $15 an hour. So topic of economics, of jobs, of job insecurity, those kinds of things. And stuff that's related, like, you know, the price of goods, price of healthcare, things like that. So I see inflation. Inflation's a big one. Prices of food going up. Family that used to just get by might not be able to get by anymore, might have to take on extra work. Mario in the chat says ground beef is up $5 to $6 per pound now. Some of those.
But let's check those profit margins for those companies that are raising these prices and see if they're staying equal or if they're just raising the price because they hold a monopoly on this, on the supply.
Yeah. And then we got jobs becoming automated and disappearing, especially in the agriculture field, lots of fields, especially agriculture. The dialogue by those in power does not include those who are most affected by decisions and rules. I think that goes back to the example that Bruno was sharing earlier about how the politicians and business owners are the ones who dominate conversations about wages and working conditions. Cool. Go ahead.
On the comment about jobs becoming automated and disappearing, one of the dynamics in society is that older style jobs are in fact disappearing, but at the same time, newer jobs and more of them are being created. But what we lack is a meaningful retraining of the adult workforce to fill those jobs. That's the primary mission of the community colleges. The community colleges are not reaching out to those who need their services the most.
Yeah, yeah, and I think that there's a lot to be. We could go into we could take the same framework and talk about the need for free college trade school. But yes, transforming and equipping for the future is what Denise says those community colleges are doing. Cool. All right, so I think we got a good amount to work with here. Let's go ahead and move over to the next Jamboard, which is who are the villains? Who are the ones who are standing in the way of us being able to make the wages that reflect our worth, that reflect our dignity? And we want to talk. We can talk any kind of villains here, but let's think about what are the ones that are unique to, or at least really important in the Rio Grande Valley, that have an outsized role in the Rio Grande Valley. And this can be directly and indirectly, because directly the ones who pay wages, low wages, but indirectly those who are also who organized against us to have better wages. So, or who are taking advantage of the situation of the low wages, rhetorically, who use low wage people, who shame and blame low wage people who are making low wages. Right. So not just the ones who pay those low wages, but also the ones who exploit the situation, take advantage of the situation. So we got local politicians, addicted to larger profit margins, not connected to nor care about a healthy social ecosystem, big multinational corporations, and I added one here that connects to those big multinational corporations, the national and international produce distributors. We got the brown skinned locals with an attitude of I got mine and repressed opportunities for others instead of helping. Wealthy who are not invested in giving back to the community. And big businesses who can afford constant employee turnover. Yeah, that's a good one. And because of their profits, because it's more profitable for them to have employee turnover than to pay people decent wages. Wealthy corporate owners lobbying against Valley's interests. All right, cool. So I think we got a good amount to work with here. Let's see. Let's go to the next slide. How do villains hold us back from winning wages that represent our full worth? So how is it that they're doing this? And so we're using this narrative framework, remember? So we're talking about how they divide us against each other, how they try to get us pointing the finger at others. How are they using? How do they use the system in order to foment those divisions? Right. In this framework, we're focusing in on those exploiting those, how they exploit divisions. We got the propaganda against unions, fear mongering, threatening that higher minimum wage will kill small businesses / mom and pop shops, making you feel that your voice doesn't matter, taking control of the narrative, being top of mind and loud, hold all political offices available, dominate the political sphere, propaganda along party lines. Yeah. And remember, they are blaming immigrants, newcomers, for taking your wages. So we can't afford to pay you what you're worth, because those people are coming and gaming the system, taking advantage of the system. The mentality that you're replaceable and don't matter. All right. Okay, what do we got next, Sergio? Okay, so let's review before we go and do that. Let's review. So we are a community of mixed status families, people who work hard, people who kept America open during the COVID shutdown, We're we're we have we in our communities, we support each other, we unite to keep each other afloat. We are the quote unquote unskilled labor that was essential during the pandemic and has always been essential. You want to go to the next? Um, and still we've faced inflation, we faced prices going up, our paychecks not going as far as they used to, where we faced higher increase in healthcare costs. And actually, I think this one about companies having record profits, I think, is a good one for the next slide. And even though we work hard and we keep the community and the country afloat, we can't take days off when we're sick. We can't take days off to spend time with our family. Next one. And yet some politicians and the multinational corporations continue to claim that they can't pay us what we're worth. That where's the one that you just brought over from?
Yeah, that was on the next slide.
Oh yeah, okay, cool. I don't know if you can bring it over. Anyways, despite their record profits, despite their record profits, they still say that they can't afford to pay us what we're worth, and they are laying off our coworkers, threatening us with unemployment to keep us in line. And yet they point to newcomers, to immigrants, to Black and brown Texans, and say that we should blame them for the hard times that they're facing. They make us feel as if our voice doesn't matter in the halls of in the corporate boardrooms and halls of power. We don't have a voice. Workers don't have a voice. We don't have a space to elevate our voice to call for the things that we all need to thrive. Wages that a $15 minimum wage, raising the minimum wage so we can afford the life that a dignified life. Cool. So this is and then we would add on here, but we can unite across our differences. Where they try to divide us, we can unite and we can say that we can organize, we can push, we can demand that our elected officials support the things that we all need, like a $15 minimum wage. We can call on our local elected officials throughout the Rio Grande Valley to pass ordinances that raise the minimum wage in our communities. And we can, just like we won streetlights for colonial residents, just like we won drainage investments in drainage throughout the Rio Grande Valley, just like in the past we won farm worker rights and civil rights. So we were going to ask a volunteer to narrate this video for us, but I figured it'd probably be easier, more direct to just go ahead and do it. But so we want to head back over to the. What do y'all think about that? About the little narrative that we put together? Thumbs up from Steven.
I like it. I like it.
We got Bruno's support for this campaign. So this is an example of how we can use this narrative in a very specific campaign that still incorporates elements of border and immigration, and that talks about what is going on here in our communities. We want to invite y'all to engage with this narrative, and to do so by drafting your own letters to your local newspapers using this narrative framework. And we're going to give you a guide. We're going to drop a guide in the chat that you can save and use to write your letter to the editor. And we want you to send that to Sergio so that we can give you pointers before you submit it, because we do want you to submit it. Let me go ahead and pull it up.
Yeah, so if y'all have any questions right now about this call to action, or if I can get some hands up, or just people committing to writing a letter to the editor, just as a draft. All right, Stephen, we got Stephen. And just so you know, people still read. Oh wait, we got Bruno. People do still read the newspaper, and a lot of newspapers publish their stuff online. So even some letters to the editors do get published online.
This is a practice. It's a practice, but it's also meant to influence the newspapers, because the newspapers, the editorial boards read their letters, and that influences how they issues that they cover and how they cover those issues.
So a question. So can we recap what we're doing? We're writing I never done this, so I'm like confused.
Yeah. So we are you're writing a letter to your local newspaper, which would be in this case would be the Monitor, because I know where you live, Bruno. But we'll give you we dropped in the chat some guidance on how to use this narrative approach, and letters to the editor generally from 150 to 200 words limit, and you write what you want to, and you email it to. We'll give you the email for the Monitor. It's called it's letters@themonitor.com. And then the email address is letters@themonitor.com, and and we can help you to format it properly and to edit it before you submit it.
Yeah, because I think so I have a couple of people, right, who can send more letters, but they're kind of lazy, so I know they're not gonna write it. So with that email, maybe I can send a little the same letter but a little modified, so they get they get the spam. Maybe that way they do.
Make it a competition. Who can make the best letter?
Yeah.
If save those people for when we have like a specific campaign call to action, right? This right here, this call to action is to help you all practice this narrative, because we're going to need to use it over and over and over this year, right? During this political year, these campaign ads and the campaign rhetoric are going to be relentless, and politicians who are in office are going to use their office to spread these divide and distract tactics, right? And so we're going to need to be using this intervention over and over this year. And so right now we want you to practice using it so that we can use it together later on. So later on when we have those campaigns, when we really need to push back on politicians, that's when you want to, Bruno, that's when you want to recruit your friends to help them write their own letter. But right now you get to practice. Everyone on here, we get our practice with this narrative, and we use it immediately in that letter.
John Michael, I don't know if you saw Denise's question.
Yes, and Denise, how do we know that they'll be published? So we don't know for sure, and generally everything that the letters that I've helped people submit have been published, and that's because the newspapers, they're starving for content. They just they need content. I don't know for sure though. We can't guarantee that. But yeah.
Yeah, I like that one section where because you said part of the tactic is making sure you talk about race overtly, and you in that one tactic where it's not like just say all people or people, be specific about those people, and overtly talk about people, not say I don't see color, or I that's some of those terms that kind of negate us as people. So anything else, any other questions about this call to action? I know we just went over 7 o'clock and don't want to keep people here too long, but we're more than open to answer any questions after the fact. My email's here, sergiot@lupenet.org. I have everybody's email that signed up for this meeting through Mobilize, so I'll go ahead and do a follow-up. Is there a word count standard, John Michael?
That varies from newspaper to newspaper. I put 150 to 200 words because that's generally what the monitor recommends, but they've published longer letters, and of course they publish shorter ones as well. And the monitor, if anybody's not here in the Rio Grande Valley, the monitor is the McAllen, Edinburgh, big paper.
Thank you, John Michael, for the presentation and all your hard work. I know you've been working on this for quite some time, and it's really amazing to see it all come together. And thank you everybody for showing up today. I saw a lot of new faces, some familiar faces too, and names. So thank you for taking time today. Before we end the day, I do want to make sure that I talk about the LUPE membership, just because we are a union or a membership-based organization, which means we depend on our members to be the main source of like the work that we do. We don't accept government grants. We do apply for other grants and work that way, but we believe that the strengths of our work and is guided by our members. And when in the past, whenever we've had lawsuits, our membership based, the number we have as members have helped us in those lawsuits, whether it was a lawsuit to get rid of the immigration question in the census, or the lawsuit against Texas where they were denying birth certificates to women if they couldn't prove that they were citizens, even though their children were born here. Thank you, Stephen, for the shout out. But yeah, I'm just going to put the link in the chat. If it's also available on all our social media. And feel free to, if you can, become a member. It's only $40 a year, and it does come with some benefits, like a $5,000 accidental life insurance. I believe that extends to our online members too, but I need to double check on that one. Yeah, and it is a calendar year. So as soon as you become a member, it finishes at the end of the year, and you can set it up to pay once, or you can set it up so that it renews every year.
It ends at the end of the 365 days, not at
Yeah.
the end of the calendar year.
Oh, okay. Sorry. I guess I misunderstood. Yeah. Yeah. So the day you become a member, it starts, and then you can renew it at the end of that year exactly. And if you don't already follow us on our social media, you got Snapchat. No, we don't have Snapchat. Sorry. Instagram. It's been a long day. Sorry. We got Twitter. Facebook is mainly for our Spanish speaking audience. We started uploading these videos onto YouTube, and then we have TikTok as well that we recently started doing videos. Right now, we have a couple videos about our staff and our new office in Rio Grande City. If you want to follow along as we continue our journey through social media. And of course, I invite you to our next meeting next month in February. It's always the last Thursday of every month via Zoom at 6 p.m. Anything else before we leave, John Michael?
No, just thank you so much for joining us, for spending part of your evening with us, and for talking about this ways that we can intervene in this political climate. And I'm looking forward to working with y'all, and looking forward to seeing your letters to the editor.
Yeah, feel free to send us a message via social media or through our email, and I'll go ahead and send an update, hopefully by tomorrow, to everybody that signed up with this information. Thank you all. Have a good night.